Hey guys, Chris here with How to Tesla. So, you're trying to make the big decision. Should you go with the Model 3 Performance or should you go with the Model Y Performance? Tough decision. Last year I felt myself in that exact same situation. What I found was it was a very tough decision. So I'm going to go over a few of the different things, things to look at, things to keep in mind, things I learned while researching between the two vehicles and test driving each one. I'll let you know ultimately what I went with and why I chose that. I'll let you know if I had to do it again, which one I would go with. And I'll let you know if things in my life changed, which model I would go with that would best benefit me due to those changes. I'll kind of get into that as we get a little later in here. So currently, your Model 3 Performance is $52,990, and the Model Y Performance is $53,990. So it's a $1,000 difference between the two. Now, when you're looking at cars up in the $50,000 range, that's really not a huge difference. I wouldn't put too much stock into how much the price difference is because, you know, say if you're planning on financing it, which I think most people probably would be, for the Model 3 Performance, you're looking at $819 a month with the down payment they recommend. If you're looking at the Model Y Performance, you're looking at $835 a month. So really, it's less than 20 bucks a month difference. It's $15 a month difference between the two. And that's just not a lot when you have a lot of pros and cons comparing the two cars. And one is typically going to be quite a bit better than the other, depending on your situation. So price-wise, I wouldn't worry too much. I think that they're pretty much going to be even. The next thing you'd want to look at when you're looking at an electric vehicle, you want to look at the range. So the Model 3 Performance, you're looking at 315 miles of range. With the Model Y Performance, you're looking at 303 miles of range. So when you're up in the 300s and you're looking at less than 15 miles difference, it's really a wash. It's not going to matter. I'm frequently driving, and I ended up with the Model Y Performance. If I had 15 more miles of range, it wouldn't mean anything to me. Typically, I'm going to reach my destination, you know, with 20% of the battery left, which is far more than 12 miles. And realistically, also, when you look at your estimated range versus your real world range, it's not going to be, that 12 miles isn't going to mean anything. So I also wouldn't take much into consideration as far as the range goes. They both got really, really good range, and you shouldn't be running into any issues either way. So the things that you're really, really, really going to want to consider, first, because you're going between performance editions, chances are you're really, really looking at how fast the vehicle is. So the Model 3 Performance, 0 to 60 clocks in at 3.1 seconds. The Model Y Performance, 0 to 60, clocks in at 3.5. Now, when I took my first test drive in a Tesla, it was the Model 3 Performance, and that 3.1 was the fastest I had ever felt. It made me just laugh out loud. The feeling that it gave you was like those butterfly feelings, or, you know, when you're going over a big hill and you get that tickly feeling in your stomach. Very similar. That Model 3 Performance, boy, is it fast. It feels amazing. Now, the Model Y Performance, 3.5, sounds very similar to 3.1. Like, it's right there. But actually, you feel a pretty big difference. It still feels really, really, really fast. Like, it's going to make you smile and laugh, and it's going to give you those good feelings. But that Model 3 Performance, it is a much more intense feeling that you get when you gun it. So that might be something that's going to be really, really important to you. Now, that definitely, the Model 3 Performance wins. Speed test, feeling, just the overall rush and excitement, Model 3 hands down. But the next important and really big thing that you're going to want to look at is the space that you have. So there's a pretty big difference, and I noticed it right away. The first time I sat in the Model Y Performance, the first thing I noticed was the cabin had much more room. Now I'm 6'2", 190 pounds, and I could feel the added headroom, stretching out. It felt much bigger. Oddly, I'm not really sure if the Model 3 and the Model Y, if in width, they're any different. But it just feels that. And it could be an illusion because of the height. But it definitely felt more comfortable, more roomy, and slightly less confining than what you would have in the Model 3 Performance. And the Model 3 Performance really doesn't feel confining. Like, it feels like a really roomy sedan. However, the Model 3 Performance, you just do feel much more space in the cabin. And if you spend a lot of time driving, it's going to be something that you're going to want to take into consideration, just the overall feeling of it. And then you also have the storage space. Now, the Model 3 Performance, for a sedan and having a trunk, it actually has loads of storage. Like, if you're not traveling all the time or hauling a bunch of things all the time, you're going to have ample storage in a Model 3 Performance. However, if you're constantly having to carry more than one suitcase and you're hauling stuff, maybe renovating a property or something where you're having to constantly bring a lot of tools or whatever, you're just hauling stuff, the Model 3 Performance is going to give you a lot more room, and it's much easier to access. It's a hatchback versus the trunk in the Model 3 Performance. So if you're constantly doing that, that is also going to be something that you should think about, because it is going to be quite important, and it is going to make you happier in the long run with the ease of, being able to get whatever you're lugging around out, and just the convenience and of saving trips. You're going to be able to put more in the Model Y Performance, so you're going to not have to take as many trips to transport the same amount of cargo. So that's going to be another big thing that you should definitely think about. Another thing is the comfort. And for this one, I'm not actually sure if this was just my mind playing tricks on me or if this is an actual thing. So the Model 3 Performance, it was completely comfortable. One of the more comfortable cars I've driven. But when I got in the Model Y Performance, the seats, it's like I sunk in a little more and it hugged me a little better. It just overall felt a bit more comfortable. Now, the Model Y Performance that I test drove had white seats, and the Model 3 Performance had black seats. And I have heard other Tesla owners comment that they think the white seats are more comfortable. And I don't know if that's maybe like a chemical in the dye that's kind of firming up the material for the seats, or it might just be a mind trick, like maybe white just looks like a more comfortable, like a pillow, so I'm not really sure if it's the Model 3 versus the Model Y, if it's the black versus the white, or if it's just my brain playing tricks on me. It is one of the three, however. I just don't know which one. When you are also sitting in the cabin, if you're going to spend a lot of time in there, something that you might want to also look at is the roof. So the roof in the Model Y Performance, as you can see here, it's one large sheet of glass that you see through, and it goes from front to back at just solid glass. Now on the Model 3 Performance, there's a bar that runs down the center where it holds like your dome light. It doesn't look bad, but it doesn't look as good as the Model 3 Performance. So if you're going to spend a lot of time in there, you want to take a girl out and stargaze or just do like a cool in-car date, that bar might be a little annoying. It was something that actually kind of had a slight effect on my decision, just because it's such a cool feature to have. I had never had such a nice car before, and having something like that was just helped show me how big of an upgrade I was making, right? So that's a little thing there. Um, so as far as which one's probably going to benefit you the most, it all depends on you. If you travel a lot, you're on the road a lot. For me, I drive all the time. I am on the road constantly every week. I'm putting probably 45, 50,000 miles a year on my car. So I'm in the car a lot. The biggest decisions for me were the space in the cabin, just the overall comfort. And the seats did play a little part in that. So again, I don't know if they really are more comfortable, but it was something that I did put a lot of value into, because if I'm having to sit here for 6, 7 hours at a time, even a little bit of comfort's going to go a long way for me. But then I haul a lot of luggage too. A lot of times I'm on my trips, I'm staying over 2, 3, 4 nights, sometimes longer. So I need to have the availability to easily lug a couple of suitcases, get it in and out of the car. And it's a convenience factor that may not sound all that important, but if you're doing it every week and you plan on keeping your car for years, you're going to find that it's probably something that you're going to regret not getting if you're going to end up doing it so frequently. Now, if your main thing is the speed and the performance, you want to show off and race other cars, or you just have this adrenaline rush every time you gun it, and that's the important thing to you, the Model 3 is the way to go. I definitely felt a difference. And you maybe wouldn't think so, like a 3.1 versus a 3.5 doesn't sound like a big difference, but you can absolutely feel the difference. It is much just snappier and faster, and it kind of forces you back in your seat a little more, and you get that butterfly in the stomach feeling a little more, and it's just exhilarating just a little bit more, So if that's your main thing, you may want really to go with the Model 3 performance. For me, with all the traveling and the small price difference between the two, it was well worth getting the extra room. Yeah, I did lose some performance, but you still get some amazing performance. You still get that butterfly, that exhilaration, that amazing feeling. Just not as much as you do in the Model 3. And that's okay for me, because I have to be realistic. With as much as I drive, I have to put the comfort and the convenience of being able to store more in here. That had to be a higher priority for me. Software and safety features are going to be really the same between the two. There's not going to be a big difference. Model Y might be slightly more safe, because there's just, as a larger vehicle, it's going to have a slightly larger crumple zone. In reality, I highly doubt that's ever going to come into play with anything, but that's just something to keep in mind. So personally, if I were to not travel for a living, and I were just making like a short commute every day, I wasn't doing overnight stays, maybe a road trip once a year, twice a year, something like that, I probably would have went with the Model 3 performance. I loved the feeling of going fast, and I do like the looks where it's a little more sporty. I probably would have ended up going with the Model 3 performance. Now, do I regret getting the Model 3 or the Model Y performance? No, not even remotely close. I absolutely love this car. This is by far the best car I've ever owned. If I had to do it again after 10 months of ownership, would I switch to a Model 3 performance? No. Having that extra cargo space has been a huge help. It's been really, really nice being able to throw a couple of heavy suitcases, a backpack. I've got this giant lunch container thing where I carry a bunch of bottles of water, just throwing everything in the back. I've got a bag that I keep a whole bunch of Quest bars and snacks and stuff for when I'm on the road. And it all fits perfect in there. It takes me just a second to grab something walking around. It's absolutely great. I love having the view up top. For those of us who have had a Tesla for a little while, you know how sometimes if you're driving at the right moment when the sky is absolutely gorgeous and you're able to actually look up and the sun's like maybe beaming through some clouds, or or you see an unusually large flock of birds, or just something really unusual and unique and beautiful. It's so neat being able to see it as you're driving down the road. And yes, if it's an autopilot, that's why I'm looking up. I'm not being overly dangerous, don't worry. But it's a really, really unique feeling. And not saying that you wouldn't get that with the Model 3 Performance, but with that bar there, it's something that I just consciously notice, and it's a much nicer view through the Model Y Performance. So with that said, guys, I hope that that's kind of sort of helped you guys really think about and make a decision, or at least giving you something to think about, maybe something that you haven't thought about yourself. They're really, really both fantastic cars. You're not going to go wrong going with either one. It's just, I think more than anything, it's going to go based off if you think that the looks are very different. If you like one a lot more than the other, that might play into it. If you're like right up against your budget and you can't afford any more, that might make a play as far as going with the Model 3 Performance, because it is $1,000 less. But I really, if any of the other features are pretty important, don't worry about that. I personally wouldn't worry about that $1,000, because when you're looking at your monthly payment, it's not going to be enough to really sway you one way. It shouldn't be enough to really sway you one way or another. And if it is, then you probably shouldn't be looking at these cars regardless. Which, by the way, I should make a video showing how much money I've saved by using a Tesla, and the different systems and ways that I work to get big discounts when I do supercharging and through my Tesla insurance, stuff like that. There's some pretty neat tips that I've found that, like, I don't know of anybody else who knows them. But anyway, that's just off on a side note. But for me, really, the room, the space, the comfort, and the view was really worth the $15 a month and the sacrificing of a little bit of speed. Either way, you're gonna, I think, absolutely love it. It's been the best car I've ever owned. Having to spend all this time in the car, it's an absolute joy. I mean, having the white seats, when I turn around and I look and I just see how neat it's just so different than every other car. I literally feel like I'm in some sort of a spaceship or a little pod of some sci-fi something, It's just a really, really cool feeling, and worth every single penny. Every single penny. I absolutely love it. And you're not going to go wrong with either one. Believe me, you're not going to go wrong with either one. But with that, I hope it helped. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll talk to you next time. See ya.